and welcome. This is Matthias 76, and together we are decoding the deception. Well, we have come to the third vision in the book of Revelation. You know, we've got these sets of seven. We had the seven seals. We had the seven trumpets. We have now the seven visions that will be followed eventually by the seven bowls or the seven plagues, depending on which translation you want to use. So we're at vision number 3, and this is the first beast, the beast from the sea. And as we shall see, this is the beast of secular civil government. But I want to roll back just a little bit here and look at where we left off. It was the dragon pursuing the woman. He couldn't get to her. Go watch that video. The dragon is pursuing the woman, and then he turns on her other offspring and goes after them. And how is he going to do that? Well, this is what we read. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. So, what that tells us is this vision is very closely related. All of these visions build on each other. This vision is about one of the means whereby he intends to what? Make war on the rest of her, the church, the woman's offspring. This is how he intends to make war on believers. Very important point. So he stood on the sand of the sea. And so now we're there on the sand of the sea. The beast is there looking at the sea, and this is what John is seeing in this vision. We read this. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as it followed the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" We'll stop there. There are a total of 10 verses here that talk about the beast. For this video, we're going to stop here. We're just looking at Revelation 13, 1 through 4, and we're going to focus on the identity of the beast. In the second part, verses 6 through 10, we'll focus on the activities of the beast. There will be some bleed over between the two, but that's the general breakdown that we're going to use as we move forward. I said before that this first beast, the beast of the sea, is the beast of civil government. We'll get into why, but this is the beast of civil government. It is the perversion of God's order of things. And what government and governance is supposed to be, it is subverted, taken over by the Dark Lord and used for his purposes. First and foremost is warring against the saints. That's what he's about. All the other things, all the other agenda points come in second to warring against the saints. So, this beast, he is the timeless oppressor of all mankind, the frightful reality envisioned in one beast for all the ages. It is the beast of secular government. It rises out of the chaotic sea to reign in terror and rain down misery and oppression, and especially persecution of the saints of God. Another key factor in identifying this beast is found in Revelation 13:5. It was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. We have seen that term before, and it's laid out three different ways: 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days, times, and half a time. And it always refers to the period of history between Christ's ascension and his return for judgment as viewed from the powers and forces of evil. When it's talking about Christ's operation during that period of time, it's referred to as the 1,000 years. That works consistently throughout the book of Revelation. So, this is not, and this is where so many interpreters go wrong, and that's why there's so many varying and wild interpretations of who this beast is. This is not a one-time ruler. It is a beast that does not go away, and it exists in many places at the same time. That is, all around the world, throughout the ages. And from whence does this beast come? It comes from the sea. Again, the view of people in antiquity is that the sea was chaos, the sea was disorder, the sea was dangerous and frightening, and way down there, Leviathan, that horrid beast that was itself a representation of Satan and his evil forces, that's what they thought of when they thought of the sea. This beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads. Now here we have a clear allusion, a direct reference, really, to the 4 beasts of Daniel 7. There, the beasts referred to specific kingdoms. The lion in Daniel 7, and there were 4 beasts in Daniel 7 in his vision there. There was a lion, a bear, a 4-headed leopard, and then just a beast that's referred to just as being terrible and awful, and a description is given, but it isn't tied to a likeness of any animal that we know. But the lion, and that dream is interpreted for him. That lion was Babylon. The bear was Persia, Cyrus the Great, etc., that was going to rise up after Babylon and subdue Babylon. The leopard with 4 heads, that leopard represented Alexander the Great, Greece. Alexander the Great, who conquered the world by the time he was 33 and then died suddenly, basically partied himself to death. But his kingdom was broken up into 4 parts by his 4 main generals. And then finally, the terrifying beast, the awful beast with 10 horns. That is Rome. So if you take the 10 horns, and how many heads do we have here? We have a lion head, a bear head, a leopard with 4 heads, and a terrifying beast. You got 7 heads. The terrifying beast has 10 horns. So this is directly pulling those beasts from the past. In Daniel's vision, one of those beasts was ruling at the time, but it is combining them, conjoining them all into one terrible beast. The idea being this is all oppressive government throughout time. And on those 10 horns, we read this, with 10 diadems on its horns. Diadems. To us, a crown is a crown. Why? Because, here in the Western world, except for those who were in Great Britain and the British Empire, we're not familiar with crowns. Our rulers don't wear crowns. But back in the day when John was writing this, there were different kinds of crowns. I've gone into the history on this type of crown, the diadem, in a video previously. But just to keep it short, that was in Revelation 12:3. Actually, you go back and watch that video. There's more detail on the diadem. The diadem was a crown that showed that that ruler was divine. That's key. Wasn't just a normal crown. That crown was understood to represent divine authority. Not that God had given the authority, but that the one wearing the crown was divine. So with 10 horns and 7 heads and with 10 diadems, each one of those 10 horns has a diadem, the sign showing that it believes itself to be God. With 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names. From the deification of emperors of old to our modern day Hegelian state, we'll get into that more, governments and those who guide them have long been blasphemously claiming authority that is rightly God's. The elites today, those people in the Council on Foreign Relations, Skull and Bones, the Jesuits, the Masons, they govern based on the philosophy of Hegel. He's a 19th century German philosopher. And most of you have heard of the Hegelian dialectic, that trick that they use to govern and guide and direct history to their ends. That's for a video for a different day if you're not familiar with it. And I will be doing videos on Hegel and the Hegelian dialectic. But Hegel proclaimed, the march of God in history is the cause of the existence of states. Their foundation is the power of reason realizing itself as will. Now this is, you have to understand, this is markedly different from what Paul teaches in Romans 13:1, where he says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. That is authority instituted by God, but Hegel is not talking about the God of the Bible, but rather the state itself as God. The individual's only purpose is to serve the state. As Anthony Sutton says in America's Secret Establishment, the state for Hegel and Hegelians is God on earth. Our elites today are properly statists. G. Edward Griffin, author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, refers to them as collectivists. But I ask this. How many nations have been governed by a ruler who proclaims himself to be a servant of the Almighty God? How many of those have actually and in truth governed accordingly? Very few. Most serve to deify themselves either overtly or covertly. Western governments today, Hegelian in the way they operate. And I'm not saying our Constitution here in the United States is Hegelian, quite the opposite. But those who govern, the elites, you can call it the swamp, you can call it the deep state, whatever you want to call it, Western governments today run by them are blasphemously railing against God as they rearrange his order of things with their concepts of gender, or perhaps I should say gend them. I don't know. They pretend to care about the children, but practice pedophilia. But as long as they throw you a stimulus check or a tax credit, talk about Orwellian doublespeak, the masses shut up and clamor for the death of the next gladiator. They play God with mRNA vaccines, and they legalize and defend and profit from the industrial scale butchering and selling of the unborn, part of which goes into vaccines. And don't call me a nut. Go read the vaccine inserts. All the while, we swill our cheap beer and wait for the next NFL football game to come on. So it most certainly has blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth like a lion's. So again, that beast being just like those four beasts in Daniel 7, all rolled together into one frightful entity. And to it, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. When Satan tempted Jesus in that showdown in the wilderness, and he took Jesus to a high mountain and in a moment of time showed him all the kingdoms of the world, he said, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." When Satan made that claim, it was not empty boasting. The authority over the 70 nations, as described in Genesis 10 and Deuteronomy 32, was given to the B'nai Elohim, those lesser divine entities, spiritual beings, and they had rebelled. They had usurped that authority as their own, and at some undisclosed point in time had aligned themselves under the dark lord Satan. The evil and injustice, the corruption and abuse of power by our rulers is the fabric of secular history. That is why its history is written in blood on the flayed hides of the downtrodden. Psalm 82, go and read it. Psalm 82 is where Yahweh, in his divine counsel, calls the spiritual rulers to account and condemns them for their malfeasance. He condemns them to die like men. Those who rule today, who play their part within this beast of a system, their allegiance is not to you, it is not to me, it is to the dark lord, and they are well rewarded for it with power. We read again, and to it, the beast, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. In temporal terms, there is great reward for selling your soul to Satan. In the short term, the Faustian bargain works well for you. And we cannot forget, we dare not forget, that the reason this beast that controls civil, or in reality not so civil, government, the reason it exists is to make war on the saints. Remember, that's what Satan was doing. He was looking for help, calling up his reserves when he stood on the sand of the sea, and this beast came forth from the chaos of the sea. We do not hear a lot about the persecution of Christianity in history. It doesn't make the history books. That's because these same elites control the publishing of books. They control information and what gets out there. You have to do your own research. You have to do your own digging. You have to go and read the works of people like James Perloff and Anthony Sutton and G. Edward Griffin, and inform and enlighten yourself. The information is out there and it is irrefutable, but you have to go looking. You can't drink from the common tap and think that you're going to be enlightened with the truth. They control the truth. And so you must seek truth on your own. We read on, verse 3. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. Now, this verse right here deserves 2 or 3 videos all on its own, and I probably will be doing follow-up videos that talk about this directly, but let's look at this. So this beast has 7 heads, 10 horns, and one of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. As a result of that, the whole world marvels. But what is this talking about? There are a couple of options, and I will give them to you. Option number 1. Government. Civilization at times appears to be undone. One evil empire goes down and another, after some time, rises to take its place worse than the first. Well, that's the safe and the easy option. I opt for number 2. Option number 2. The head that was dealt the mortal wound but was healed is Rome. Rome never went away. It was subsumed into the Roman Catholic Church, again, the Roman Catholic Church, and was birthed into the British Empire, the City of London, and the United States, the District of Columbia. Understand this. This beast does not go away. And that's why everyone marvels. The Vatican City, is a city-state. It exists all on its own. The City of London, not London, the City of London is a small little part of London, as you and I think of it, but it is its own city-state, is a nation of its own. And so also, and many of you who listen to me are Americans, most people don't know this. Washington, D.C. is a city-state. It exists in and of itself apart from the United States. Mind blower, I know. But this beast, that is Rome, it never went away. Let's just look at some examples of architecture. Here is the United States Capitol building. What kind of architecture is that? Here is a recreation of a temple, a big building in Rome. There are some really fascinating things. You can go out there and look at a virtual computer recreation of Rome, like a hover thing that goes around Rome. This is a shot from that. Here is part of the Vatican. Do you see similarities here? Now, let us jump to Daniel 7, verse 8. Talking about the beast that he saw. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns, those 10 horns, represent different powers throughout time, but all on the head of Rome. A little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things, like blasphemous things. I think we need to consider the possibility that the Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C. are the behind-the-scenes powers that rule the world, and we can see that. Their power is increasing, and from the 3 of them will come the final worldly authority, the Antichrist, and his world order. So again, one of the heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. One of the things this beast does is it wages war. It wages war to bring things about as it wants them to exist. Finally, it is a one world government under that one little horn that will pop up described in Daniel. But in spite of all the horrible things that this beast does, waging war for profit to bring about its own political ends, etc., the persecution of the downtrodden, especially Christians, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. Now, we'll get to this in more detail in the second video on this vision. But when it says the whole earth, that's talking about those who are not believers. But why? Why would they marvel? Why? Sinful man loves power, might, and ferocity. Go on YouTube and see how many views videos about death and suffering in World War II receive. It's history. There are a host of videos showing animals kill other animals. It's science. It's the real world. It's realism. Stories and retelling of the sick and twisted abound. People love Nero, Vlad the Impaler, Hitler, Stalin, and Ted Bundy. They can't get enough. Should it then surprise us that the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast? I think not. And if that mindset is there, if that mindset has been instilled, then is it any wonder? And they worship the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast, and who can fight against it? We love power, and we love to be on the winning side. Americans are addicted to it. So the worship of the state that views itself as God in their Hegelian worldview, the worship of the state is the worship of Satan. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast, and they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. Who is like him, and who can fight against it? We're going to have to stop there. Believe it or not, I kind of rushed through a lot of stuff. I alluded to that, but there's so much here, so much that plays directly into what is going on in our world. This stuff that I mentioned about Hegel, vitally important to understanding what's going on in our world, and I will be putting out some information, some videos about that. I want to thank you for watching. I think this is the 40th video that we've done on the book of Revelation, so there's a lot of stuff out there you can watch. There is a playlist that has all those videos. If you liked this video, do me a favor, feed the algorithm. The algorithm likes a thumbs up, so give it a thumbs up on whatever platform you're watching on. Give it a thumbs up. Please, I invite you to subscribe, and if you subscribe, please make sure and hit that notification bell. That way, you're made aware when I put out a new video. And finally, consider sharing this video with someone else, either on social media or just sending a link to someone. Thank you for watching. This is Matthias 76, and together we are decoding the deception. God bless, and have a great day. That concludes our broadcast for today. We publish our videos on YouTube, BitChute, and Brighteon. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give us a like or a thumbs up. We invite you to subscribe so you can continue to receive our content. Also, please consider sharing this video with others. We love to hear from you, so please leave a comment below. This is Matthias 76, and together we will continue to decode the deception.